everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Conscious Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Elise Abraham, Faith in Sparkles World. And if you are new to the channel, welcome. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Today, I have an extremely wonderful guest. Her name is Kristen, and she is a mother. She was a nurse, but now she's taking it. It has evolved. It has expanded. I know she used to do nutrition, and I cannot wait to learn how she is a rebelpreneur in her industry. Kristen, welcome.
Thank
How
you so
are
much
you
for
today?
having me. Oh, I'm good. I was just thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, rebelpreneur? I love that. I've never heard that before, but I was like, that's awesome.
Yes, and that's exactly what you are. But before we get to that, please share with us who you are, who you serve, and how you are strategically influencing lives in this generation as well as beyond.
Yes. Well, I'm Kristen Nagle. Because you mentioned who do you serve? So I'm a daughter of the King. I serve our God Most High. I don't always do it well. We are all there, but that is my purpose here since finding my faith in 2020. But how that came to be was I was a nurse of 14 years, primarily spent in the neonatal intensive care unit. And yes, I am a homeschooling mama of three. And sometimes timing of things just don't work out so well. So I hope everyone can bear with me, and hopefully we'll figure out this little girl so I can continue on, right?
Oh, we will be fine. We will be very well fine. And this is all part of exactly what you're doing. And
this is exactly of what my mission is now. So being a former nurse of 14 years, my first kind of door that opened up to my path was when my first son was born in 2015. So when he was born, it was really pressed on my heart that I should look into what I would feed him. And that was my first entry into, I guess, the corruption of what I was seeing. So I became really passionate about food, what our children were eating, what we were going to feed them. And I became a holistic nutritionist. And within that, as I was studying health, I realized health was so easy. Why don't they teach us this? Why in my 4 years of nursing, why in my entire nursing career did I not know this? And so I started to speak out quite boldly about children's health, which led to children's immunizations. And that kind of got me in trouble with my College of Nurses of Ontario. And at that time, that was 2018, 2019, and I was scared to lose my job. I was scared to lose my license, and I took the slap on the wrist. I said, you're right, I'm wrong, I won't do it again. But when I walked out of that meeting, I said, if they ever try and mandate anything again on my children, there's nothing that's going to stop me from speaking out. And I just didn't expect it to be so soon in 2020. Yeah. So I spoke out quite boldly in 2020 about the mandates, the public health measures put in place, social distancing, the lockdown specifically for the children, because in my community, I was hearing a lot of harms of what was happening to the kids. 6-year-olds wanting to kill themselves, pretending to slice their wrists with credit cards. It was quite horrific. So during that time, I became a public voice, a public figure, and I guess freedom activist. And then when I became pregnant with my baby girl in 2023, I knew I needed a shift. I didn't want to fight anymore. I wanted to create solutions to create a better way forward for our children and future generations. So that's what I shifted into, creating change, creating new solutions. And it led me into creating the birth conference with my friend Christina Nagle. Reclaiming Birth is a way to help solutions of just trusting our own bodies and moving away from the medical system. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of the things I really want to highlight and share. You went to school traditionally. You got the qualifications that is mandated that we're supposed to get. And I understand, like, if you're a nurse and a doctor, there are certain things. And then once you have children, all of a sudden things start shifting. I know when I was pregnant with my daughter, I looked at so many so many things. I looked at the schools in the area. I looked at all of these, you know, what is she going to eat? How did I want her to grow? Like, what type of training is it going to be in? And there is a proverb that says, train a child in the way he should go, and when he grows up, he shall not depart from it. And that is what I kept with me. And it sounds to me that that same principle and that same proverbs is okay. You had your son, you started off with the nutrition, and then said, okay, I have to stand up, which you did, but then the fear comes in, and I completely understand. I'm a single parent, so if you're when you're losing finances, even like being married, you know, and you're married, just losing a certain amount of income and your finances, it it's fearful because now you're thinking, what are we going to do? How are we going to live? And so I commend you for taking the step. Now, before we get into the rebirth conference and all the ways you're supporting mothers, I really want to understand that shift between 2019, just before all the mandates came in, and 2023, because that is a massive shift in about 2 or 3 years. Yeah, because 20, yeah. So let's say in a 2 year period, you went through a huge transformation from I'm standing to fight, I'm fighting the good fight, to I'm becoming a solutionist. What was that transition like for you?
Uh, it was actually very hard, to be honest. It just, I created this space. I was being welcomed on, public stages. I was being welcomed to participate in global events. I was asked to go speak in Vienna. And it was the people I was meeting, the doctors I was meeting, just not even, and just regular citizens standing up, journalists, like all these incredible people that I'm so honored to have met, to be connected with. It was really hard to make that choice, if I'm being honest, was to leave all that behind. But I knew that I just didn't want to keep fighting this narrative and be a part of, fighting against these systems that I didn't want to be a part of anyways. I didn't want to keep being in this same echo chamber where we're kind of talking about the same thing over and over again. It's like, okay, we know what happened. We know what side of history we're on. We know that we were right in the sense of making the choices that we did, but what are we doing about it? And that's where I found there was always this missing piece. Every time I went somewhere, I was like, okay, we keep talking about the research, the evidence, and all this stuff to kind of prove what we had stated all along, but where are we going with it? Where are people going to turn to? Where are people going to go when they have this information? What do they do with it once they know this? And so it was really hard to leave all that behind, what I had been a part of, because I was like, okay, well, my whole identity is going to change again. I went from being a nurse, and that identity was gone, and then going into being this freedom activist and very public voice in the forefront of so many events and public speaking engagements. And I was like, okay, well, now that identity is going to be gone. And what does that mean? So I had definitely a hard time with that transition, but I knew that it was placed again on my heart. I knew that that was a message that I had to be obedient to from God. And being pregnant with baby girl, I so wanted to make sure her pregnancy, her growth was protected. I had two losses prior, one each, after my first son, one after my second son. And the second loss was 2021 during the national hospital rallies that we had organized, where we were there standing up for the nurses and their mandates. And I received so much hate after that event that I wonder, how much that affected that pregnancy at that time. So with that, the transition was also made because I wanted to make sure that my pregnancy was protected, that there wasn't this negative energy, that this baby that I was growing was going to be protected. So that was a big part of making the shift, was honoring this baby that was growing inside of me. And I was literally creating life. So I was like, okay, well, in this creation mode, how are we going to create solutions for these children that we're bringing into this world? Where are they going to go? What's the future look like? How can we bring them hope? I needed something to work towards, knowing, our children are going to be okay, because there's going to be other solutions. There's other things that they're going to go, that they can be a part of and grow into. So that was kind of the shift. It didn't come easy, but it started with wanting to protect my pregnancy, mainly because my first two boys, I was this nurse who thought home birth should be illegal. I was very much bought into the fear that birth was dangerous, that birth, thank goodness for the medical system. Thank goodness it was all there to save us from being pregnant. And so I had the epidural, induction, the whole work in the hospital with my first two sons. And with this pregnancy in 2023, I was doing it out of system at home with a traditional birth companion. And I wasn't going through any tests. I wasn't doing anything. I was not part of the system at all. So I really wanted to protect that space, entering in this totally different realm of physiological home birth. So that's kind of how the transition came to be. Mm-hmm.
That's an intense 2-3 years and transition, because there's a lot of trauma associated with that. And as a woman, I understand. And it's not easy. It's not easy, one, because we're more empathetic. I'm not saying men are not, but we are. And we're the nurturers, tend to be. Again, I'm not saying men are not, but as the woman, as the mothers, we're carrying these children and birthing them and growing them and essentially guiding them to lead the next generation, to be the next generation of leaders in society. That's just it's a fact, and this is all over the world. So what you experienced in all of that time, compounded so much, is a lot. And then, as you mentioned, in 2020, now you started building this relationship with God and getting to know, who is God? What does this mean for you? And then, then of course, with baby girl, sweet girl, this blessing, beautiful blessing that you have, you're like, no, I'm going in the opposite way. So that's intense. You mentioned homeschooling. Before we get into the rebirth part, this is where I met you. At your the first conference that you had, and for homeschoolers. Why did you decide to homeschool your boys at that time?
Yeah. My oldest, who is now 9, it's crazy to think when all this started in 2020, he was only 4 years old. He was in JK.
Yeah.
And he was in Waldorf. So we were doing something a little bit different than the public education system. But then everything shut down in March of, was it 2020? Yeah, March 2020. And, and so he was out of school, and I was like, okay, well, you're home with me. There's no other options. Everything's shut down. And my husband's a teacher, so he was home. And we're like, okay, we'll keep doing this. And then come the next year, it was like, well, I'm not really sending you back to Waldorf. I didn't love how they adopted some of the protocols of health checks and some other things that were going on there. And also, being completely honest, I didn't want to have to pay again.
Yeah.
If things shut down, because those 6 months he was not attending, we were kind of paying and donating, I guess, to the school. I can't remember how it all worked out at the end, but that was a big thought of like, well, you're not going to public school. I can't send you back to Waldorf, because if things shut down again, we're not going to continue paying to keep you home. So it was like, okay, I guess. And then we made the decision and committed to, okay, we're going to homeschool. And that was, and then we've never looked back. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing. And I'm so committed. My husband's a high school teacher. and fully on board. So I think that's a big testimony right there that he sees, like the high school students, where they're going after being in the public school system this whole time. And he's seeing these grade 11, grade 12s and what they're up to. And he is fully on board with keeping our children home and teaching them ourselves.
Yeah. And you are an adventurous family.
Yes.
There's no joke. You're outside. There's no such thing as, some people, they look at it and be like, well, how is their reading, or how would they get into universities? And I homeschool, and I had a family member ask me that. And I was like, there are tests for that. It's easy. Like if she wants to go to a university, she can write one of their tests for whatever. And if she wants to go in there, she can. But what she's learning, how to essentially not only survive, but thrive in any economy, anywhere in the world, it's important. And I see you doing that with your sons, or with all three of your children, really. You're teaching them not only to survive anywhere, but to thrive, to be able to thrive, but by giving them not only the basics, but the experience, because they're outside a lot, which is a good thing.
Yeah, we definitely spent a lot of time outside. We were blessed this past year. My husband was able to take parental leave. And so we were blessed to take our whole family on a crazy adventure and go to Central America.
Yes.
And we try and spend as much time as possible. We were just camping this long Thanksgiving weekend. I thought it might be our last time in our little tin can trailer. We try and be outside as much as possible. And what a difference it makes. What a massive difference it makes in the children. My oldest might do a little bit of complaining prior to leaving on this camping trip. But once we're there, oh my gosh, like everything shifts. It's just they're immersed in nature. With the last day we were there, I ended up getting involved in them, but we built this massive shelter in the sand dunes of Grand Bend. Like it was just so beautiful to be outside working together, trying to figure out how we're going to lift these huge logs and build this shelter. And it was really amazing to do that as a family. And I don't know, I just have been reflecting on that a lot. The more we're able to spend outdoors, what a difference that makes versus when we're, I don't know, in the house. And there's so much more learning that happens outdoors than sitting down at a table and doing traditional school.
100%. And now you get them to use their brain and use their God-given gift, common sense. Like I say this to my daughter sometimes. I'm like, guess what? All you have to do in life is use your common sense, and everyone will think you're a genius. And she's like, really? I'm like, yes. And I go, guess what? It's free. But in this generation, they're not using it. So you're already ahead. So she says to me, so do I have to read every day? I'm like, well, yes, you do. Because you want to make sure you know what you're signing, and you want to understand words. I go, the reading that you're reading, and how I teach her, I go, it's more important for you to understand. And one of the things I've always, I love words and reading. I'm always explaining to her the meaning of words. If she and she always asks, what does this mean? Is this a good thing, a bad thing? And that in itself, just asking these questions builds out a whole conversation. And right then and there, I'm like, that's already a lesson, because we're outside, we're using these words. And so now when she's doing her thing and being a little mini entrepreneur, she's just so confident in herself and in her abilities, and she's unashamed to say, what does this mean? Oh, how is this going to help? How is this, she's looking at it from different perspective. Similarly to your son, they see life very, very different from their peers and those who they encounter, because they actually had to use their common sense, and they're asking you and your husband questions, and you have to come up with solutions. And I'm sure sometimes you tell them, you go and think about that while you're chopping things up.
Yeah. Well, and if even being honest, like sometimes, and I'm sure this is the same, because when you're raising critically thinking children, their questions, you realize kind of where they're at with the questions they ask. Like, they are so hard sometimes. I'm like, that is an excellent question, and I have no idea what the answer is. Let's go find the answer. Let's look it up. And that's the best way to learn, is the curiosity. It's like leading into the questions they have. If they're interested in something, it's like, okay, let's get some books on this topic, or let's get some things, or maybe it is a quick like Google search, but we try to do other things to layer in the learning on top of that. But some of the questions, I'm like, the fact that you are even thinking like that way is impressive. And I was like, great question. No idea. And it really is amazing. I've been very blessed in the London area where I am. We have a really strong homeschool community. We started this Forest Friends Day every Thursday, and we started September of 2020. And at one point we had 50 kids and families running through the forest during the thick of the lockdowns. And there's been a core group that has stayed, and consistently someone has been there every single Thursday, like has not missed since 2020. And so the last couple of years we've layered in more kind of what's the word, like just more kind of interactive learning days, where every 3 months we do some kind of a big group event that they don't get since they're not at school. We've done a science fair. We've done diorama days. I think coming up next is a art and talent show. But this last Thursday was the Kids Makers Market. And we do this a couple times or a few times a year. And Logan, my kids, because I'm not artistic. It's just not my thing. I'm not crafty. And so my children have not got that from me, but I'm a foodie. I'm a foodie at heart. Logan is my foodie with me, because he was the one that was with me when I was going through school. He was only 1 year old, so he was learning basically everything I was learning. I was like, try this food, try this. And so he's kind of found a niche at these makers markets where we always end up in a park or a building where there's no food. There's nowhere to go. And we're always there from 10 or 11 until 2 or 3, right in the thick of lunch. And so he's been the lunch guy. His first event he did gourmet grilled cheese, and it was amazing because he got so excited about being there with all the kids that he took off from his station and left me to do all the work. So he got home and he was so excited about all the money that he made, and I was like, oh no, like, you have to pay back your supplies, pay back your float, and now you're going to pay your employee who works for you. And he was so mad about that, because I charged him minimum wage for my services for the 4 hours we were there. And I was like, no, you have to pay your employee. And he was like, oh, I'm never doing that again. And so the next one he did pulled pork, and he's very involved in getting the ingredients and making it and doing all this stuff. And he stayed and served all the food the whole time and made sure, he's like, I'm not paying anyone to do this. And it was just amazing to see. And this last one we did was he did homemade burgers. He really wanted to learn my mom's homemade burgers, and that's what we did. And he had a grill set up, helped him a bit with the hot stuff just to make sure. But he manned that station and did well. Now people know him as the lunch guy, and he has this market that no one else has there. And it's been really cool to see how he thinks. How he is evolving, how he's thinking of different things that he can do the next time and different foods and keeping it interesting. And I just love that. Like, we were never taught that in school. I've seen Christoph once said a quote that got me once, and it was, in school, they teach you how to write resumes, but never how to write a business plan. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Well, and if your son, and it's a fact, if your son was in school, he would not have had this opportunity. I'm not saying he wouldn't participate in the makers market, but his focus may or may not have been to participate, because there are a lot of parents who think, well, you can't have your kids working, let kids be kids. And it's like, well, is he really working? He's learning a valuable lesson. He's learning how to be an entrepreneur. He's actually taking the critical thinking skills that you're actually working on, and he's putting it to use. He's working on his math, because at the end of the day, he has to pay people he don't want to pay. He has to buy food he doesn't want like ingredients, right? He has to know, okay, grandma's special burger, that means he has to get the ground meat, and ingredients to put in there. And maybe he borrows your ingredients. I don't know if you let him. And then now he has to multiply, a lot of multiplication, because how many people are going to be there? How much is this going to cost? So there's a lot of math. There's a lot of science that's going in there because he's cooking. It's science. And then at the same time, figuring out averaging, and this is statistics. Well, what was the average? What was this part past markets that and how many people were there? So on average, okay, if there was 100 people, 90 people bought from me, perhaps another 90 people will buy again, right? And then you got to think about weather. You got to do all of this stuff. So this is like a whole family project. I'm curious though, before we move on, does his little brother help him?
He likes to do his own thing. He was really big on wanting, he had his mindset on donuts. So we worked together and made cinnamon sugar homemade donuts together. But he was very involved in that. But he stuck by his little booth, never left his little station with his donuts. And I think he ended up with like 3 left. He was so proud of what he did. And the other lesson, and you're right, we did all of those things with the science, the ingredients, the budgeting, the thinking, okay, how many people, this, like all the, and Logan had to write it all out and get it, his mind thinking, asking questions. And Liam, he's 6. He was really big on the donuts, and his lesson was what he didn't want to pay back the float. That was really hard because that was like, his money, but trying to teach him that's not his money. And then there's other kids around selling things. So it's like, okay, well, when he got money, he was buying. But he did really good about making sure he just picked one item that he wanted from that day to make sure he actually went home with, some funds. So even that aspect of like, okay, well, if you have money coming in, you see all the kids there of things you want to buy, you could end up, going home with nothing, which happens a lot in his dad. So it's just this amazing, I just love it. I think there's so many great experiences out there for our little homeschoolers. And you kind of touched on it briefly. It's like, okay, I want you to be able to read, write, and do basic math, but I know all that will come, but all these other life skills and critical thinking and common sense is so valuable. The other stuff,
so valuable. And I'm with you. So now you have the path, the way, you're training your children up in a particular way. Baby girl comes along.
Yes.
She's seeing all of this like incredible life for the first time. She probably will not remember all of it, just only in pictures, but the experience and the essence of it, that's going to last. That foundational piece is going to last with her for a lifetime, guaranteed. Why did you decide on rebirth? That's the name of your conference.
No, it's reclaiming birth.
Oh my goodness. And I was about to say reclaiming birth.
Yeah.
And I switched it. I apologize. Reclaiming birth. Why did you decide on, I'm going to this is part of my platform now. You didn't switch completely because you're still doing the homeschool. You're still part of the community, but now you're saying, I'm going to advocate for mothers and their children and bonding and that nurturing aspect. Why reclaim birth?
Yeah. Well, it started, God places you in areas that you need to be, and you don't always realize why until later. And you had mentioned, yes, I came to faith in 2020. I went to Catholic schools as a young girl, and I pushed it all away. It just didn't feel right to me. I hated it. It created this like visceral anger within me. If I ever heard the name Jesus, just like red, I don't know. It just triggered me to no end. It must have been, who knows why these things happen. But that was how I was for years until 2020, when I started to kind of unraveling all the darkness that was going on. And it was like, okay, if things are this like evil, like this is like demonic, this is pure evil, and there's a duality to everything. And the mantras and the things, the meditations I am doing is not strong enough to defeat how dark this is. So there has to be a complete opposite to this evil, which must be God, which must be then brought me back to learning more about Jesus in that relationship. And then it was like, yes, like that is it. It finally made sense to me. I finally understood. And so with having that faith, it was then realizing I had been placed in this work as a neonatal intensive care nurse to see the harms that were happening. And I was a part of those harms. I was very much an active participant in the harms that were happening to women and babies. I thought what I was doing was the right thing. I thought it was necessary. I thought this was helping. I thought it was how we cared for our babies. I thought it was all necessary. I got in fights with friends about their decision to home birth. I later went back and apologized, but I thought they were reckless. I thought they were dangerous. I thought it was a stupid decision. And I needed to be a part of that world to see it firsthand, to then have the veil lifted, to see it for what it was. And the attack on women and families, because men are involved in that too, and on the children. And I remember when that veil was finally lifted, and it was about 2018, 2019, when it was like fully removed. My soul was being crushed every day going into work and seeing what we were doing and what I was a part of. And I remember like so many things that are wrong, but I just remember the last baby that I was like, I can't do this anymore. This perfectly healthy baby, absolutely nothing wrong, but it didn't meet the right weight requirement, and 5 pounds to stay with mom. And because it was less than 5 pounds, we took this perfect baby away from its mother and put it in an isolette alone and hooked it up to all the machines and all the monitors and for observation, just because it didn't meet a requirement. And I had done this many times before. Many times we take babies away from mother for nonsense reasons. But I just remember really this hitting me for the last time and knowing that I just couldn't be a part. And I didn't know if I'd have any other children. I remember thinking that I was robbed of an experience I didn't know existed with my 2 boys because I wasn't open to hearing the other side, because all my career I was just told how dangerous it was and how stupid it was and how just you're putting your baby at risk. But when I finally heard and was open to receiving what physiological birth was, what home birth was, I remember just feeling robbed of an experience I wasn't informed properly about. And so I didn't know if I'd have another baby, but praise be, we did. And I did everything different. No testing. I was 39 going on 40. She was born 11 days before my 40th birthday. I was a geriatric pregnancy, supposedly high risk. And I just trusted my body. Prior to that, and most women without knowing, and I was one of them, you give up complete responsibility over your body, complete responsibility. You go to get your blood work done. Am I even pregnant? You go for the dating ultrasound. Well, you have to prove that something's in there. I need that heartbeat. Then you go for another ultrasound because you're told to make sure everything's okay, even though there's no changes that are going to be done from that test. No care will be done differently, except added stress. Then you go to the next test. Okay, you're still growing. Okay, everything's okay. You're totally just trusting someone outside of you. And it continues on. When you're now going in labor, someone's there telling you how to position yourself, how to lay, you're strapped to a bed, how to push, when to push, do all these things. You're totally outside of your body. Your partner's usually standing at the head of the bed, not even being a part of it, just a bystander. Again, no responsibility. Baby comes, first thing that's done, goes to a table, injected with man-made synthetic. That says, well, this baby did not come out perfect. This baby's flawed. Man needs to fix this creation and then give baby back to mom. And then from that, the cycle repeats, because then all of a sudden now we're going to well baby visits. Doctor, is my baby okay? Is my baby growing? Are they getting enough food? Are they eating? Or all these things. And then we've got disempowered, not trusting individuals going through life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had baby girl, it was like this full circle finally completed, where I was able to come inward, trust my body, trust this growth, trust God, trust the experience. It was the hardest, most beautiful thing I've ever done in my life. And I remember afterwards just thinking, more women need to know this is available to them, and more women need to know that they can do this and that they're able to do this, and it is for them. It is there for them. And so the first birthing conference was actually last year, and it was kind of just to set the tone, set the stage. And then this past year of 2024 was, now the fire is raging. People get it. The momentum is there, and we are just getting started, because we're not asking the system to change. We're saying enough is enough. We're doing it ourselves, and we're taking it back the way it was meant to always be. And we're taking it back within ourselves. We're claiming all our power, not just birth. We're reclaiming our power. We're reclaiming birth. We're reclaiming motherhood. We're reclaiming our partners, our husbands. We're reclaiming the family unit, and we're reclaiming our children. So it is more than just birth. It's the way forward, and it's this movement that I'm just so incredibly passionate about, especially because I was on the inside, and I was a part of the harms, and now I get to be a part of the change.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And for those listening, please know that Kristen was a nurse, and she was in the pediatric area. And so with her transition into the home births, it wasn't just idly and or neglectful thinking. There was work that went in on her part. She touched on the trust part, but also understanding, okay, who's going to support me in this home birth as well. Not saying that she's not going to do this. Her husband was involved, and if you're following along with her, you would see sometimes she posts the birth experience. Her husband is there. He's holding the hand. He's rubbing the back. And I know that sometimes we see these things in hospitals, but it's very involved. And she also had, I believe, is a doula.
It was actually a traditional birth companion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was someone else there as well to support her through the process. So the conference, this is a huge support. There's the reclaiming, yes, but then there's a huge support that comes with it. It isn't idle. It isn't neglectful. It isn't, well, this is what we're going to know. It's strategic, based on me following along with you and understanding what you're doing and communicating with you, and having conversations with women who we're in the same networks with. And so it is strategic in the reclaiming. And a lot of times we think we can just go in and advocate, but Christian very much mentioned, if there isn't a plan, then you're just going to be fighting all the time with no solutions. And so her transition, her experience, her journey is to bring the solution. And here she's bringing the solution, and with the solution comes the support. So please share with us, what does the support look like? I know this year was your second year. It was very popular. You had some great sponsors that were there, and I loved seeing the whole area with like babies and toddlers and kids and mothers just everywhere. But of course, it's tasteful because it was beautifully done. But just seeing families there. So please share, what does that support look like?
There's a whole community, for sure. There's a whole community there that is supporting, that is there with you. traditional birth companions, other birth workers, sisters, women. It was nice to see so many dads come out, whether they were in the room helping with the babies or whether they wanted to listen, or maybe they just wanted to be, they were out, they made a family event of it and they're at the hotel, at the pool. But there is Billy Harrigan, who's been many of our mentors and a huge force in this movement for 40 years. So she has been creating what she calls the Harrigan Hive. And within that, there's all the support that is needed in a community. But we're hoping, Christina and I, to keep this momentum going throughout the year, so you don't have to just wait for next year's conference. We're hoping to do in-person events, some online. We really love the in-person. There's so much online opportunities which are needed, because it's great that this technology can reach us all in different parts of the world. But being in that room, there is an energy that just can never be replicated. There's a power there that can never be, imitated online. So we're going to try and keep up some once a month in-person meetings, try and do some online events. But the network of traditional birth companions, birth workers, even midwives that were there that are wanting to learn new information, and just women connecting with women and supporting women. And we're hoping to have more men supporting each other as well in this. But it's bringing back the wise woman, the neighbor. And that's what Billy would always say. She was like, well, before it was just the grandmother or the sister, or you just grab your neighbor who had some kids before you, and that's it. And we're just bringing it back into an actual community. And it's beautiful to witness and see. And oh my gosh, my heart was so full overseeing the children there and the babies, and knowing my kids were there for a part of it, spurts of it here and there, and it just fills my heart. I was part of an event with our mutual friend last February, and I remember it was not received well that we had our children with us. And at first I found that I was apologizing for this, that I was apologizing for their presence and apologizing that I put other people in that position with bringing my kids. And then after this event, and I was like, oh no, I see what's possible. I'm not apologizing for my children's presence. Are they always perfect? No, but they're children, and we are the ones that are adults. And we need to learn how to grow up and bring them and allow them to be a part of these spaces, so they can see the change, so they can be inspired, so they know that what we're doing. And because we keep saying it's for the children, we're doing this for the children, but are we, if we're not including them? We had one of our speakers say that in the 15 years that she has been part of fertility and kind of a birth world, she's like, this is the first time that children were incorporated into the event. And were babies making noises? Was it sometimes distracting? Were we able to be adults and just focus on what we needed? Or were some strangers helping parents? I mean, this one man, my friend that came, he got in so many baby cuddles. He loved it, like helping other moms with their children. And it's like, this is what we get to do together. And this is the environment we get to create with our children, with families, and with our elders, with the actual wise women and men that are there to teach us. And so it is so much more than just an event. And we keep saying it's a movement, and it is. And this is the environment and the energy that I want to continue to foster and grow into.
Well, that's a good cause and a good movement. And when I say good, I just don't mean that lightly. You were reclaiming, but beyond the reclaiming, you're getting the wisdom from the elders, the aunties, the grandparents. We live in a time, and you touched on this, that it has been neglected. We used to call it the crone, right? There's the young girl, the teenager, and then of course the older woman. But we need that older woman. We need that wisdom to be passed down, because there are things that we do not know in our 40s that they would know. You shared with when your young son, I can't remember which one it was, when he cut his knee, and you had healing herbs in the back, right? And then you crushed it up and you were sharing, and He was like, I think he thought I think he thought he needed to go to the hospital. The way how he was acting, and then you're there asking him questions while you're like with your mortal and pest thing, and you're crushing it, and
Oh yeah, that would have been Logan. He had scraped his knee pretty good, and yeah, I was like, okay, well, let's get some herbs and fix this up. And no, his idea. He is, when it comes to stuff like that, like he is just fearless. It was his idea to go get the herbs and film it. He's like, Mama, you should put this on Instagram. Get this
yeah,
out there. So
I thought it was
he
great.
was all about being part of the show. It was his idea. That is one tough cookie, but it's fascinating to me to see their ability to learn and take this information in. And he's like, yeah, let's go crush up some herbs, put it on my knee.
Well, that's the thing. Most of the time, we would not do that. We wouldn't use that. And then within, I think it was like 30 minutes, the scrape was like almost non-existent. Like, and he was bleeding pretty good while you were crushing the stuff up. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, time elapsed, and you showed how just putting the herbs on there, crushed up, and it just did its work. But then, of course, nutritionally, he's eating good food as well too. So of course, his body will also help speed up the healing process mixed with the herbs that you put on there. But most people would be like, oh no, we got to clean it with like polysperm or something like that. And you're like, nope, go pick something in the garden.
Nature's medicine, nature, God has everything for us. And even people panic over the bleeding. Yes, you don't want things to be bleeding profusely, and you want to make sure the bleeding stops.
Yeah.
But the blood is the natural cleaner. That
Yeah.
is what it's doing. It's cleaning everything out of all the debris. And it's just so beautiful when you can learn to trust our body's responses, and that our body is always there to heal. Our body is always healing and always protecting us and always taking care of us. And it was divinely created. It's always, our body's always going to be way smarter than us. It knows what it's doing. If we just learn to trust these responses that it innately does, it's quite beautiful.
It really is. Faith, always, she never liked taking medicine, Tylenol, stuff like that. And I'm not a big medicine person anyways, because like, why? But anyways, she never was that. So even if she's sick, she'll be like, okay, I'm just gonna go lie down. Maybe she's feeling a headache. Why do I have a headache? Oh, maybe I didn't drink enough water. Or what did I have? Like, so we're always sifting through that and trying to figure it out before we get into anything. And she doesn't want to. She doesn't even want to use Vicks. You know, like back in the day, you have a sore throat, like you gotta rub Vicks everywhere. She's like, I don't want to use it. She's like crying. But then if I take some lime and honey or lemon and honey and mix it up, she's like, oh, it's bitter. Oh, okay, I know I'm gonna be good. And so just going as natural as possible and using these simple remedies that will help. It makes a difference. Now, obviously, people, as you're listening here, if there's like, something major and you need to get, medical support for something major, then obviously, you get the support that you would need. But, and when I say major, maybe, there's a heart attack or something like that that's happening, or major bleeding or something, and you do your best to stop it. So, but I love what you're doing, and I love the community that you're building. Last question. Well, second to last question. What does it mean for you to be a conscious rebelpreneur?
Yeah, that seems like a big one. Just I was like, oh, because I've never really thought of myself that way. I was like, oh, it's quite honoring to hear those words. I think it's to realize that you're capable of change. I think of myself and how indoctrinated I was, and the things that I was a part of. And when I was finally open, the seeds have been planted, and I was finally allowed those seeds to grow and change. It's knowing that we can all change. And what are we going to do with that change? What are we going to do with the ability to make a difference? And how are we going to do that? And it's remaining, for me, to continue to have compassion. And I say that because I forget. I just started to write a post the other day that I haven't published yet. And it was titled, "Where Were You When?" And I was thinking about the nurses that came forward, said they supported us back in 2020 and early 2021, but that they waited until their job was in jeopardy and then stood up and made a decision. Well, we felt that we were going through all the, the burdens of everything. But what I realized was everyone's going to have a "where were you when?" I think how many people would say that about me? Where were you when we wanted to have a home birth and you said we were stupid? Where were you when we were doing this? Where were you when? And anyways, this is a long answer. I think I've been kind of trying to reflect on my path. And I was like, Jesus never asks what took you so long or where were you? He just says, welcome home. And as I move forward in my own unlearning and learning, it's making the change that I can. When you know better, you do better, but remaining to stay compassionate to those that might come along at their own time. Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that answer. It says that Jesus never said, where were you? He just says, welcome home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for you to be a conscious leader, conscious rebelpreneur, because you're rebelling against the norm. And this is a good thing. You're just saying, welcome home. And you're emanating and imitating what you've learned from Christ. That in itself, I believe, is one of the main factors of why your community is growing so rapidly and people are feeling welcome, because there is no judgment of, well, you should have done it. No, welcome home. I'm here. This is our space. Let's build it together. And I can see why families, mothers, midwives, doulas, birthing partners, that they will show up, nutritionists, they will show up and say, I'm here. And you welcome them and say, welcome home, because that is what's going to create that peace, that balance, and really to raise a generation of shepherds. That's what they are, shepherds, to lead and take care of the sheeps. And so, thank you. How may we get in contact with you?
I'm not lately, actually. I took some time off, which has been very nice. But I would say I'm most active on my Instagram account at Kristen_Nagle. I also have my website, KristenNagle.ca. And those are probably the best two ways to get in touch with me and personally. And then you can check out our reclaimingbirthconference.com, join that newsletter, stay up to date for things that we will be creating together in the near future and leading into next year's birth conference.
Thank you so very much. Please note all of Kristen's information will be put in the caption. Reach out to her, connect with her, and start reclaiming birth. Reclaim it. Have an incredible day. If you like this episode, hit the subscribe button. Also, if you know someone, a mother, a grandmother, and anyone who is saying, yes, I want to be part of this community, share it with them. Share it with them. Have an incredible day, and I'll see you on another episode. Bye.